Common Sense Army, it is Wednesday, and on today's episode of the Why I'm Right podcast, we're talking about the sham trials of Donald J. Trump and everything going on in New York City. You probably have seen it on the news. You probably have seen it all over the place. Donald Trump, a former president, in a courtroom. But the bigger story may be what's going on outside of the courtroom. You got people in New York City lined up in the streets to support Donald Trump, to sing to Donald Trump. It's been a crazy scene in New York City. And last and certainly not least, the Democrat Party, the elites in this country, they believe this will be the final nail in Donald Trump's political career. I make the argument today, the only thing on trial today, the only thing that can get discredited is not Donald Trump, it's our justice system in this country. Listen up, because I'm about to tell you why I'm right.
We live in a world filled with noise and confusion, clickbait, and outright lies in the media. But here, we cut through the clutter to find the truth, no matter how uncomfortable it may be. This is Why I'm Right, the podcast where we dig deeper, ask the tough questions, and unravel the tangled webs of political and current events. Join us as we dissect the latest news, analyze political rhetoric, and challenge the narratives that dominate the mainstream discourse. We're not shy. From dissecting the motives behind policy decisions to uncovering the hidden agendas of public figures, it's what we do. It's time to think for ourselves. This is Why I'm Right. And now your unafraid and unapologetic host, Matt Taylor.
He is right. My name's Matt Taylor, and this is the Why I'm Right podcast. If this is the first episode you guys are tuning into, I'm happy you're here. If you're a member of the Common Sense Army already, thank you for joining us again. We got a very important episode today. As I say on every episode before we dive into it, if you could do me a favor, my goal is to grow the Common Sense Army one day at a time, one podcast at a time. One way that you can help me do that is by liking this podcast, sharing this podcast, and subscribing to this podcast. It goes a long way because, as I say on every podcast, the goal is to grow this thing one day at a time, one podcast at a time. We want people that agree with us to listen, and we want people that disagree with us just as much to listen to the podcast, because I believe the most important thing in our nation and this country and this world right now is for us to be able to have political discourse, conversations, because I believe the only change that happens is if you go through tough conversations. So without further ado, let's dive into today's episode. As everyone has been seeing on the media, as you guys have been watching on Fox News, CNN, whatever you guys take in your media, if you flip your phone open, you go on social media, what do you see today? It is Donald Trump in the courtroom once again. And so the first day, on Monday, when Trump showed up in the courtroom, people were talking, this is a historic day. Democrats were salivating over seeing Donald Trump in the courtroom. And what does Trump do? He shows up, a crowd outside, the people in New York City chanting his name, USA chants all over the place. And it's kind of funny because if you think about the way this is going right now, the world is going, the United States is going right now, it seems like the left, whether that be here in the U.S. or abroad, chants about their nation. You know, here in U.S., you see Trump supporters, MAGA supporters, Make America Great Again Republicans chant USA, 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 and the left wing of this country and all these movements in this country chant death to America in the streets here in the U.S. It's become a really popular thing over the last few weeks. Again, it's been a crazy scene in New York City. It really has. And so I know Trump probably is loving every minute of it as much as you possibly can. No one wants to sit in a courtroom, but he has capitalized. You know, Dan Bongino says all the time, a campaign is about snapshots and sound bites. And every day that they show Donald Trump in the courtroom and he gets that one moment, you guys have probably seen a million of them so far. When Trump comes out of the courtroom, he's got about a 30-second to a minute window where he gets to speak to almost every American every single day right now, because they're putting it up. The headline at the bottom of the mainstream media is former president being charged and is in court, whatever. Trump doesn't care. All Trump cares about is he's there. His face is being shown on everyone's television, everyone's phone, and he's got a minute to give his message to the American people. And he said a lot of things over the course of, the last 3 days in those little minute-long segments. And he always ends it by saying, and I'm honored to be here. And that just shows who Donald Trump is right now. And again, it shows that he actually is benefiting or enjoying it. Laura Trump came out this week. She now works for the RNC. And she said Trump raised over $1 million on the first day of his trials. And so this could be the biggest backfire in political history. I argue it could be, it will be, and it already has been. Because Donald Trump is built different. You look at what's gone on over the last 2 years since Trump has been out of office, and then the campaign season started about halfway through Biden's presidency. So the last 2 years, year and a half, we already kind of knew Trump was getting ready to run. We already knew that Trump was thinking about running. Most people knew he was going to run. But if you remember, look back on August of 2022, that's when they raided Mar-a-Lago. And when I say they, the Biden administration and the corrupt DOJ that we have now seen to be political. For the first time, our justice system has become political. Our DOJ has become political. Our FBI has become political. The CIA is now political. And so in August of 2022, they raid Mar-a-Lago. And I believe this could have been the biggest and most glossed over story in news. And I also make the argument that that was their warning shot to Donald Trump. They were telling Donald Trump, if you run for president, the gloves are off. We're going to come after you. And they were throwing a warning shot over the bow and saying, if you run for president, the gloves are off. We're coming after you. You're coming after your people. We're coming after your administration. And we're going all in on this. And since that day, Donald Trump has not only doubled down, tripled down, he is ready to roll here. He is ready to win this election. He's starting to become more presidential. Every time you see him speak and you compare him to who's in the White House today, you're seeing a different Donald Trump than you saw in 2016. The message is the same. The movement is the same. But yet, the approach, the candor, and the way he conducts himself, in my opinion, seems drastically different. Because he's been there before. He went through the Russia hoax before. He went through impeachment hoax number 1. He went through impeachment hoax number 2. He went through January 6th, the insurrection, all of this kind of stuff he's been through already. And so the Democrats somehow believe that this trial, you listen to MSNBC, CNN, they're salivating over this. They can't believe this is going on. They believe this trial is going to somehow hurt Donald Trump. The guy that had the Access Hollywood tape that they thought would end his presidential campaign in 2016, they didn't learn their lesson here. This guy is different. He has people behind him that understand him as an American, understand his agenda, and guess what? Now they have 4 years of history to see what the country looked like under Donald Trump. They got to see what it looked like to protect our borders, what it looked like to cut taxes, what it looked like to take an unpredictable approach on the foreign stage, and you brought peace through strength instead of what we're seeing today, which is war through weakness. And so you look at this. Somehow Democrats don't understand today. They believe this is going to hurt Donald Trump. Trump, when he's attacked, he gets stronger. He's one of the few people we've seen in politics throughout history that thrive on opposition. He gets energy from this stuff. He gets energy from the tension. And he does things very differently, and his reactions are very different from most in his situation. And so as the pundits on TV, as the Democrat Party, as the Biden administration sits there and calls this the hush money scandal or the hush money trials, Again, this is nothing more than a campaign finance violation trial. But it sounds worse in their minds to call this a hush money scandal. There's nothing illegal about paying a porn star or anyone for that matter. There's nothing illegal about the action that they're calling the hush money scandal. What is up for interpretation or could be a problem for Donald Trump is if he disclosed as a campaign finance or if he didn't. And so they believe somehow this trial, if they label it the hush money trial, and they label it the hush money trial with a porn star, and they do what they're doing right now, that it's going to hurt Donald Trump. It's going to discredit Donald Trump. And I believe it's going to do the exact opposite. I think people that support Trump right now are going to gather behind Trump even more. And if anything, you're starting to bring out more people to see how corrupt the Democrat Party, the Biden administration, the Obama administration was, and how corrupt our justice system is slowly becoming under this administration and under the political ideology that we're seeing from one side of the aisle. That never was the case before. The FBI, the CIA, these were supposed to be agencies that weren't impacted by politics. And Americans across this country believe that politics and politicians are liars. Americans believe their Congress is corrupt. The military right now is a joke. The business elites in this country are greedy. That schools are insane. That religious leaders are somehow immoral. And the justice system in this nation was the one saving grace, the one thing that had a reputation of, it wasn't perfect, but anybody could get a fair trial, at least to a degree. And what we're seeing right now with a judge who obviously is political, an attorney general in New York City, Alvin Bragg, who clearly ran on the principle of, I'm going to put Donald Trump behind bars. I'm going to go after Donald Trump. He won his election based on the one sole objective of going after Donald J. Trump. In this case, we can call it a case, I guess. This trial, this case, would not have been brought against anybody else in the history of the world except for Donald Trump. And so I'm saying right now, this trial, no matter how it goes, because most likely what's going to happen, folks, is Donald Trump will be convicted. He's not going to get a fair trial. We already know that. You see the judge, what he's doing today, telling Trump, you cannot leave New York City to campaign. You cannot leave New York City to go to your Supreme Court hearing. You cannot leave New York City to go see your son's graduation. This is the agenda here. Let's tie Trump down to the court system. Let's tie Trump down to be in a courtroom instead of being on the campaign trail. It's kind of hard for somebody, right? It's kind of hard for somebody to go out there and campaign if they're told they can't leave New York City, a city that historically has been very Democrat, very left-wing, very liberal city, New York City. But I'll tell you right now, if you look at the scenes in the streets of New York City today, when Trump is going out there and they're singing God Bless America, they're singing the Star Spangled Banner to Donald Trump in the streets, they could change New York City. And Trump even said it yesterday. New York City is in play. We're going to make a move for New York City because I believe we can win in New York City. And I can tell you, when the people of New York start seeing this for what it is, they already are. That's a real possibility. And if Trump wins New York City, this thing is over, folks. 100% this thing is over. The American justice system right now is being used as a political weapon. And the American criminal system, like I said, is supposed to be the one system, the one thing that no matter what happens in this nation, it's not a political thing. This is sacred. No matter who you are, what you believe, where you come from, this is supposed to be the one thing you have in this nation. But they want one thing. The Democrats want one thing. And they're probably going to get it from this. and I think the result of it is going to backfire completely. They want the title. Let me make this clear. They want the title to call Donald J. Trump convicted felon Donald Trump. Convicted felon Donald Trump. They want that everywhere. They believe somehow if they can get that notch under their belt, that they went after them, they politicized the justice system, the criminal system, the DOJ. They politicized the CIA, the FBI. They've gone after Trump so many times. They now want the one thing is the title, convicted felon Donald Trump. And the reason they want this, if they actually believed in the candidate of Joe Biden, if they believed that Joe Biden was popular, that people liked his policies, that people liked him as a president, that people actually supported this guy that supposedly got the most votes in the history of the world, if they truly believed in Joe Biden, the candidate, or even Joe Biden, the president, they wouldn't have to do what they're doing right now. They wouldn't have to raid Mar-a-Lago. They wouldn't have to charge him in New York City for stuff that has been going on for ages. Politicians have done this forever. There are campaign finance violations that go on in most campaigns. And they want to call it a felony in this scenario just so they can call it and get that title of convicted felon Donald Trump. But the Democrats know that Joe Biden is unpopular. They know his positions are weak. His policy is weak. His policies are unpopular. They know he can't even speak a clear sentence to the American people. They know he can't even walk upstairs or walk off a stage without someone helping him. And they believe if they label Donald Trump a felon and they could now call the election something different, they give it a title. Instead of Trump versus Biden or Biden versus Trump or President 45 against President 46. Again, this is marketing here from the Democrats. They want this election to be defined as President Joe Biden versus the convicted felon. That's what they want. And we've seen this since August of 22 when they raided Mar-a-Lago. The tables started to turn. And maybe that's Joe Biden's fault. Maybe that's the Department of Justice's fault. Maybe people are just waking up to the policies of the Democrat Party right now and saying this shit isn't working. But to be real with you for a second, what we've noticed since that famous August 22 raid of Mar-a-Lago is that their whole backup plan is not going to work. Their whole backup plan is going to backfire. Because if you look at the polls in August of 22 to where we are today, Trump gets raided in Mar-a-Lago, his poll numbers go up. They charge him in Georgia, his poll numbers go up. They charge him in New York City, his poll numbers go up. He has the E. Jean Carroll case in New York City, his poll numbers go up. He has the issue with the loan case in New York City. His poll numbers go up. And now he's on trial in New York City, and his poll numbers continue to get stronger and stronger. And the most important part of this is it's happening in swing states. And that shows me that some of the Democrat base that supported Joe Biden in 2016, or at least supposedly supported Joe Biden in 2020, are starting to turn. And there's a reason, folks. If you look at our Bill of Rights, you look at the Constitution, the most important document, I said it yesterday on the podcast, the Constitution was not a document written for the times. It was a document written for the test of times, a document written to be able to stand the test of times. And our Bill of Rights, the first 10 Bill of Rights that we had before it was amended, 4 of these Bills of Rights, 4 of the amendments, the 5th, the 6th, the 7th, and the 8th, all of them address our criminal justice system and what someone needs, has a right to in our criminal justice system. Because guess what? They understood that the criminal justice system is not supposed to be political. The criminal justice system is the ultimate exercise of state power. Because if you don't have checks and balances, that equals locking up political rivals, locking up political opponents, going after people based on their ideology, not based on their crimes. This trial and all the other sham trials going on, there's a ton of them right now, a ton of charges, right? You look at Trump, he's got all of these different trials going on, charges going on, felonies going on. These trials will not hurt Donald Trump. They will only hurt the reputation of our justice system. And folks, I say it now. This is the distraction. This is the distraction. Because they understand who Joe Biden is. They understand how unpopular Joe Biden is, how unpopular his policies are. This trial and these trials and these charges are the distraction of the Biden administration. It's their final Hail Mary. And if you don't see that, when you look at the polls, the Democrats are freaking out because minorities are flocking to Trump. Places like New York City, you're seeing supporters coming out in the streets, and they're realizing this is their only chance, is to label Donald Trump a felon, get the title, and change the name of the election. Call it Joe Biden, President Joe Biden, Uncle Joe versus convicted felon Donald Trump. And people are starting to see what this truly is, folks. And that's why you're seeing what's going on. This guy is built different, and he is built to be a president. He's built to be a leader. He's built to be a businessman. And that's why he's been successful every time at everything he does. Because when things get harder, he gets stronger. And that's the kind of leader we need in the White House today. I don't care if it's Donald Trump. But if I told you, if you take the name off of it for a second, and if you said Joe Biden, President Joe Biden, guess what? When things get tough, Joe gets strong. Instead, when Iran's talking about going after Israel, he says, don't. That's not strong. You remember what Trump would send in messages to Iran? What Trump would say on the national stage? He would send out a tweet and say, if you do this, you will feel the wrath of the American people, the likes of which no one's ever seen. You remember these tweets that we had? The Democrats got heated over. He made fun of Kim Jong-un. Okay, hit your button. Hit your nuclear weapon button. Hit it. And then you'll feel the full wrath of what's going to happen to you because the U.S. has the strongest military in the history of the world, and we have the this is the kind of leader we need. Peace through strength, not war through weakness. And so, folks, I think this episode really is here for you. Because I want you to go look at what's going on in this nation. Look at the poll numbers. Look at the swing states. Look at what's going on over the country. And this is why the Common Sense Army, not only us, but the movement of people like us, is starting to grow. Because people aren't listening to the mainstream lies. People aren't listening to the media saying, Donald Trump's a felon. Look at what he did here. They're actually looking at the facts for themselves and seeing it for what it is. And so as we move on in this podcast, we're going to keep diving into many issues. A lot is going on for the 2024 election. Every day, the cycle is going to get stronger and stronger. At some point, I'm going to have to start doing 2-3 podcasts a day because there is so much news right now. And we also have the foreign policy issues going on all over the place right now. Russia, Ukraine, big deal. Big deal. China and Taiwan could be next. And you obviously see what happened this past weekend with Israel and Iran. There's things going on across the globe, folks. And I believe with an American president in power who is strong, who is unpredictable, who knows how to be a leader. When things get tough, he gets stronger. When they attack him, he gets stronger. That's the kind of person, when we're in a world, not just the U.S. right now, that's in absolute chaos with the border, with inflation, with the economy the way it is, with the crime the way it is, with the division in this nation. The U.S. is in shambles, but the globe has chaos like we haven't seen in a long, long time. And I believe it will take a leader in the United States of America, the leader of the free world, someone who's not just going to bow down to the establishment. Someone who, when things get tough, when they go after him, when they come after us, and that's the simplest question you can ask any one of your Democrat friends, any one of your liberal friends, just ask them this. When things get tough, who would you rather have on your side? Donald J. Trump or Joe Biden? Do you want the guy that can't even stand up, say a complete sentence to the American people? Do you want the guy that says to Iran, don't? Or do you want the guy that when things get tough, he gets stronger? When they attack him over and over, go after his family, go after his businesses, go after his companies, go after everything this man has ever built. When they try to impeach him once, they try to impeach him twice. They try to not let him in office by making up a Russia hoax. Who do you want on your side? The guy that can get through all of that and get through that stronger? Or do you want Sleepy Joe? Hair-sniffing Joe? Child-sniffing Joe? I mean, you tell me who you want on your team. And I hate saying it to you at this point. The options are, it's either Donald Trump or you're a liar. Because if there's any Democrat out there that actually can say with a straight face that you'd rather have Joe Biden have your back than Donald Trump, you're either insane or you're a liar. Those are the two choices at this point. So I think the choice for America is going to come down to that issue, right? Because as the things in this nation and the things in this world get worse and worse, I don't see a lot of these things getting better before Election Day. You think Russia's just going to stop in Ukraine? You think Israel's just going to come to some sort of peace agreement with Iran and Gaza? You think China's not going to go into Taiwan? I mean, look at what's going on the global stage. We know they're not going to fix the border here in the U.S. So whoever the next president is, Republican, Democrat, Biden, Trump, whoever it is, they're going to come into a scenario where the globe is in chaos and the U.S. is in shambles. And who do you want to inherit the shambles? Somebody who can get through what Trump has gone through and get through it stronger? Somebody that rises to the occasion? Or somebody who falls down the stairs? You tell me. And so on this episode of the Why I'm Right podcast, like I said, we dove into the Donald Trump trials. I'm sure there'll be more news coming out of these trials, and it's soon, once they have the jury pool fully selected and they, try to say that it's an impartial jury and that the judge is impartial, and after they convict Trump, let's see how that works out for him. Let's see how that works out for them. Because guess what? As I said earlier, when they raided Mar-a-Lago in August of 2022, they were sending a warning shot to Donald Trump. If you run for president, we're coming after you. The gloves are off. And since that moment, Donald Trump went from here in the polls to here in the polls. And every single time they've charged him, he's increased. When they arraigned him in Georgia, he increased. When the E. Jean Carroll verdict came out, he increased in the polls. When the New York City trial regarding the loans happened, he increased in the polls. So let's see what happens when they get the label they're looking for and they get a convicted Donald Trump against Sleepy Joe Biden. And let's see what happens there with the polls. Because I got a feeling, right? I got a feeling we know which way his poll numbers are going to go. They're not going down. They're only going up. And the more you wake up people who are on the fringe, because the people that don't like Trump, the Democrats that don't like Trump, fine. You're never going to win them over no matter what. Ever. But the people who like Trump are the same way. Trump could do anything and they're still going to vote for Trump. It's the people in the middle that when you do things like this and you weaponize the Department of Justice, you weaponize the criminal justice system, which is supposed to be the one sacred thing in our nation, and you weaponize that on a scale like we've never seen in the history of this country, You start alienating those people, and that's what's going on in Michigan. That's what's going on in Wisconsin. That's what's going on in Pennsylvania. That's what's going on in swing states like Ohio. That's what's going on. Those fringe people who decide elections are starting to be alienating and saying, oh my gosh, what are they doing in New York City? What are they doing in Georgia? What are they doing in Washington, D.C.? And that's how elections are won and lost. And I can tell you one thing. I got a feeling this is going to be like no election we have ever seen. And so as we move forward on the Why I'm Right podcast, we're going to stay up to date with all of this. And we have a ton of episodes coming out the rest of this week. Make sure you guys stay tuned. As always, make sure you guys like, subscribe, and share these podcasts. We want to grow every single day. If you want to talk to me, all you have to do is send me an email at matt@whyimrightpodcast.com. Visit our website, whyimrightpodcast.com. Check us out. Send me an email. I'll get back to you. And if you want to be on the podcast, we can kind of do a debate. If you disagree with me on certain things, we could do a debate, have a conversation back and forth, because the conversation in this nation is so important to our future. Whether you agree or disagree with me, the conversation needs to happen, because we need people to open their eyes. And I believe we're getting there right now, one day at a time, one podcast at a time. So like I said, this has been the Why I'm Right podcast, and I just told you why I'm right.
You've been listening to Why I'm Right. Thanks for being a part of the Common Sense Army. Our passion is to cut through the noise and confusion and to bring light to clickbait and outright lies in the media. Unafraid, unapologetic, real and raw. We hope you've enjoyed the show. If you did, make sure to like, rate, and review. We'll be back soon. But in the meantime, find us on Instagram at Why I'm Right, on X at Why I'm Right Pod. And for more, hit the website at www.whyimrightpodcast.com. See you next time.